NASA has spent decades designing a mission to get humans to the surface of Mars. They estimate the cost over $100 billion, which would make it one of the most expensive scientific projects of all time. However, it's the organisation Mars One which has been grabbing all the news headlines for their proposed mission to take humans to the surface of Mars. However, many people are sceptical about the reality of the Mars One project. So, is Mars One going to be the project that gets humans first onto the surface of Mars, or is it a load of old space junk? So if you haven't heard of Mars One before, they're a private company that aims to get humans onto the surface of Mars by 2030. They're led by the Dutch entrepreneur Bas Landorp, but with the backing of many scientists and engineers all the way around the world. The really novel thing is they don't have any backing or associations with any space agencies such as NASA or ESA, which is a really new and novel way of looking at space exploration, which could completely change how we look at space travel in the future. So what's their plan to do? Well, their initial timeline was to send up an exploration rover to the surface of Mars in 2014. This would find a suitable place on the surface of Mars to set up a base. Then all the equipment, living quarters and initial supplies would be sent up to the surface just 7 years later on rockets. Once everything was set up, 4 astronauts would go up in 2022 and they'd be the first colonists living on the surface of Mars. Over the next few years, more colonists would go up until there was a stable and steady colony on the surface of Mars by 2030. And this would be a one-way trip. There'd be no chance of returning. This has made lots of people ask themselves the same question. Would you go on a one-way trip to Mars? Would you leave everything you know behind for a dangerous trip to Mars and live on the red planet for the rest of your life? Then again, you'd be the first person to live on another planet other than the own Earth, so that's something to consider, surely. Now this is obviously a really exciting project. We've never even got a human to Mars before, let alone someone living on the surface. And the idea of private companies revolutionising space travel has already begun with companies such as SpaceX and Virgin Galactic, but this is taking it to a whole new level. So it's no real surprise that there are many skeptics of the Mars One project. And most of the criticism and skepticism comes in 3 main areas. Can they realistically get astronauts to Mars in such a short time? How are they going to pay for the whole thing? And how can they find suitable astronauts that want to go on a one-way trip across the solar system? Now I said before what the timeline for the project was. They hope to get humans living on the surface of Mars by 2022. However, there have been significant delays in almost all areas of the project so far. Now, delays in space mission aren't unusual, with NASA and ESA having many delays in their space missions. However, the criticism comes at how unrealistic the timeline was in the first place. They said they'd get a satellite orbiting around Mars just 3 years after the organisation first begun. Now, it seems almost impossible to get a mission set up and launched just 3 years after it's first conceived, but this is even harder if the organisation has only just begun. There's also questions whether the company has the technology and techniques to get humans living on the surface of Mars. How will they get more supplies? What are the psychological effects that will affect the astronauts? All of these things have to be answered. It seems unlikely they can be answered in just a few years. And this gives a whole skepticism whether the timeline of the Mars One project is realistic or not. Despite all these problems, one of the biggest concerns with the Mars One project is money. An initial study by Mars One estimated the cost of sending 4 astronauts to Mars at $6 billion. This cost will rise as the colonists will have to be resupplied with general supplies and also equipment over time. Now, $6 billion might sound like a lot, but actually in terms of space missions it isn't that much. An equal NASA study of how much it would cost to send astronauts to and return from Mars came out at over $100 billion. Now, Mars One claimed that because there's less politics involved with private companies, they can reduce some of the costs, but it seems very unlikely they can reduce the cost from $100 billion down to just $6 billion. But apparently Mars One have yet to raise anywhere near this amount of money. However, they do have a really unique and novel way of raising money for the mission. They plan to create a Big Brother style reality TV show of the Mars colonists. Cameras will capture the Mars colonists all the way around the clock, and this will be broadcast back down to Earth. This is a really great idea. Lots of people are going to be really interested in Mars One and the people first living on the surface of Mars, so it's bound to raise a lot of money by people watching, and it will get people really involved and interested in the project as well. Of course, all this money is only going to start coming in once the astronauts are actually up on the surface of Mars. This means a lot of money still needs to be raised before even the first satellite can get off the ground. But it isn't just people external to the Mars One project that have criticisms of it. Mars One recently opened up applications for anyone to apply to be one of the first astronauts on the Mars One mission. There are 2,500 applicants, and this was whittled down just to 100. These final few will go on the psychological and physical test to find the best astronauts suitable to go on the first mission to Mars. However, there have been some really strange things about the selection process so far. Dr. Joseph Roche is one of the successful applicants who's got through to the final 100. And he noticed some unusual things about the application process so far. For example, despite being in one of the final 100, he's never actually talked to anyone involved with Mars One for more than a 15-minute Skype call. This hardly seems enough to be able to find a suitable astronaut to go to Mars. Secondly, he claims there are only 2,500 initial applicants, despite Mars One themselves claiming there are over 200,000. These, along with other irregularities, have questioned the seriousness of the Mars One project application process. And while most space agencies and missions face problems, it seems that Mars One is facing more problems than most. Combined with unrealistic targets, a lot of people are losing faith in the Mars One project. This is a real problem. A lot of people already have negativity and skepticism towards the large amounts of money that space agencies spend on space missions, and this is just weakening this trust. It may be better if we more focus on the larger national space missions, as they're more able to deliver, especially for large milestone missions such as getting the first humans onto the surface of Mars. But despite this criticism, Mars One definitely has some positives towards it. Private companies can surely reduce costs by getting rid of a lot of the politics involved in the space mission, such that space agencies have to deal with. Also, some really great novel methods, such as making the Mars colonists stars of a reality TV show, are a great way of raising money and also getting people really involved and interested in the space mission. It's just that these novel ideas have to be built upon some really solid ideas at its base. So whilst the chances of Mars One succeeding in its current form are pretty low, there's definitely potential for in the future it being a possibility of private space companies getting people to live on the surface of Mars. But until then, we should probably focus all our attention on the larger national space companies, such as NASA and ESA, who are more likely to be able to succeed in getting humans onto the surface of Mars in our lifetime. So there you have it. Hopefully you know a little bit more about Mars One now. And I really hope they succeed. It's just that you have to know a little bit more about the realities of the project, so you're not just walking into it blindfolded. Thank you very much for watching my video. Don't forget to check out the rest of my channel. I have lots of really good science videos in all different areas of science, astronomy, astrophysics, biology, chemistry, everything. You can follow me on Twitter at UKAstroNut, and on Facebook just look up UKAstroNut. Otherwise, don't forget to like, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all soon. Most of us learn to use the toilet by the time we're 3 and we've mastered it by 5. But we have it really easy down here on Earth. Gravity helps move things along, we have water to flush everything away, we have massive sites to get rid of all the waste and clean the water before sending it all back out. There are a lot more problems when you try and go to the toilet in space. So, how do astronauts go to the toilet? How is everything flushed away? And how do they cope with zero gravity?